Hi, in this video I want to discuss attribute field form widgets, how to use them and set them up for field data collection in input. So this is layer properties for my survey layer for trees, and I have all my different fields shown here on my attributes form tab. And what I'm going to walk through is how to select each one of these fields and select the appropriate widget type and configuration options below to create a more intelligent and more intuitive and user-friendly data collection form for the field data collector. Okay, so I'm in my QGIS project, and I've opened up the layer properties for my survey layer, and I'm on the attributes form tab. And with an attribute table, just to give a little more background on this, if I open up the attribute table, I can look at it in the standard table view, and there's also form view. And I don't have any records in this data set yet, but if I did, I would be able to see the form view of my table. And that's really what we're working with when we work with the attributes form. So for example, the first field, FID, this is one that's just created as part of the GeoPackage format. And this isn't something the data collector needs to concern themselves with. It will auto-populate. So I can simply choose a widget type of hidden. And this will mean that it will get written as features are collected, but the data collector does not have to see it. Moving on to tree species, here this is a text column, and this is going to be a field where the user can type in what kind of tree it is, maybe oak or sycamore or elm. So this can just be a text edit. And to explain a little bit more about how this works, Lutra Consulting, who developed this system, has a nice gallery of the different widgets that are found in QGIS and how they can be viewed or used for data collection and input. So the text edit here, for example, is probably the most common one, and it's for text columns. And it's going to basically, in input, have a little box where the data collector can type some text in using the keyboard on their mobile device. There are other options here. So since this is going to be tree species, there's another widget called a value map that allows you to set up different lists. So if we had a list of trees that we expected to collect data on, we could set this up as a value map. And we'll see how to set up a value map for one of the other fields in a few minutes. But for this one, I'm going to just set it up as a basic text edit widget because I'm not sure what kind of trees I'm going to encounter out in the field. I just don't want to come up with a list and have the list be incomplete. Another nice feature of these widgets, that there's an alias up here. So instead of the data collector just seeing the name of the field, tree_species, I can type in a more descriptive prompt for the data collector. Here I've put in enter the tree species. There are some other constraints down here that can be useful. So if this is a required field, I can select not null for this. And if I do that, this would mean that the data collector could not save the feature until this was answered, until there was a value entered for tree_species. So if you have any fields that are required, you can enter not null for those to enforce that. There's also a default value for most of these widgets. And so if there's one type of tree that's dominant in your study area, say sycamores, you could have that as a default value. So if I was to do that, I would type single ticks and the name of the tree that I wanted to be the default value, and that would show up as the default. So things like that can just save typing and make data collection faster. So if there is a need for that, that is an option for every one of these widgets. But for tree species, that's it. I'm just going to enter the alias and call it a text edit. Oh, I should also point out that it's also possible to have a multi-line text edit, but since tree names are fairly short, I don't think I need that in this case. Next, we'll move on to tree type. And this field will be where I collect information on whether it's deciduous or evergreen. So for this, I can choose a value map. So I have two choices. And this will basically give the data collector a pick list of choices to choose from. This can help eliminate data collection errors. It eliminates typos since they're picking something from a list. So I can type in the two choices, and I'll use the same value for the value and the description, and then evergreen as the second one. So I have my two values for tree type, deciduous and evergreen. And again, I can enter a nice alias to make this more intuitive to the data collector. Just type in deciduous or evergreen question mark. The next column is fruit tree. So this is a Boolean field, yes or no, true or false. So checkbox is automatically selected when we have a Boolean field. So the only other thing I'll do here is enter an alias. I'll just type in fruit tree question mark as a prompt to the data collector. The next item is circumference. So this will be measuring the circumference of the tree at 1.3 meters above ground level in centimeters. So for this one, this is a very specific operation. So for the alias, I'm going to kind of have some directions. Measure the circumference at 1.3 meter above ground in centimeters. And this is a numeric field. So for a numeric field, I can choose range as the widget type. And for range values, there's several choices. There's editable, slider, and dial. Slider and dial are really more suited to integer values. So I'm going to keep this at editable, but I can enter a minimum and maximum value here. So my minimum value, I'll set at 5, and my maximum value, I'll set at 1,000. I don't anticipate getting values larger or smaller than these. And then I can set the step at 0.5. Moving on to photograph. For photographs, we can set a widget type of attachment. And we want to choose store path as relative to project path. That's a good setting to have. And if I scroll down, we'll find this integrated document viewer section. And we want to set the type to image. And then we could enter an alias such as take a photograph. And this widget allows the data collector to take a photo or choose one from the gallery, either way. Next is date. And for date and time fields, it's going to choose the widget type of date time automatically. And we're going to keep these default settings for field format, and widget display will be the calendar pop-up. But one thing we can do to make our data collection form more intelligent here is enter a default value using the function now, which will return the current date and time. So this will be the default value, so the user won't really have to do anything. They can just accept the current date and time and save the point. So moving on to notes, this is another text column. I'll choose text edit, the default value, but I'll select multi-line in case I have a long comment to enter. And for alias, I'll just use a capital N. I'll just type in notes with a capital N. And finally, collector. So this is to collect the name of the data collector. So the widget type will be text edit. And I have some different options I can use down here. I could, for a default value, just type my name by putting it in single quotes as the default value. But there is another option here. There are margin variables. So I could use the margin variable at margin underscore username. And that would return the username of my margin account automatically as the default value. So this is a set of margin variables that you have to choose from. So I just put in margin username, which would return my margin username of Geomenke as the data collector. There are some others as margin URL, margin project name, margin project owner, margin project full name, and margin project version. So these are all different margin variables that you can use if appropriate for your project. Okay, so now we've set up the basic data collection form for our survey layer. And in the next video, I'll show you how to use the drag and drop designer, which would allow us to tab these different fields into a more organized arrangement.